Hi, welcome to week 3. As you can see, I have our next assignment up. I'm going to go through and explain that and chat a little bit about the concepts behind a refusal letter. There's also another video this week that will talk specifically about the format of a business letter versus a memo. As if you think back to last week when I talked about memos, one of the things I said is that these formats are kind of universally recognized and they, in and of themselves, start to communicate something. And a letter is kind of a step up in formality from a memo. A letter can be internally exchanged or externally. In the case of assignment 2, this is actually has a scenario behind it, and this will be an external letter. So let's first think about this. What is a refusal letter? What this is going to make us do is force us to deliver bad news through writing. It's something that unfortunately comes up in the professional world, and having some experience and some practice is really helpful because it feels uncomfortable. And so this is going to help you to kind of develop a tone and choose your language appropriately in order to deliver some bad news. So your textbook says the ideal refusal letter says no in such a way that you not only avoid antagonizing your reader, but you also maintain goodwill. And that's going to be important in our scenario, because in our scenario, you are representing a company. Okay, so you're working at this company and you are going to write a letter to an imaginary applicant. You may give them a name, who has applied for a scholarship that your company is awarding. You have to inform them they were not chosen for the scholarship. So you represent a company and you do not want this applicant to have negative feelings toward the company's services or products in the future. You certainly don't want them to go and badmouth you on social media, right? So you somehow have to deliver this negative news in a way that doesn't make them feel resentful or spiteful towards your company, so that they'll still embrace your company or the products that your company sells or whatever. So that's your challenge. And as I said, it's definitely tough, but it's really good to practice this. You may be in a position where you have to call and tell people that applied for a job that they didn't get it. You may have people that you are in a position sometimes of having to let go, to fire, or to lay off. There are always going to be times that you're going to have to deliver bad news, and it's good practice to do so. Why are we doing it in a letter? Because a letter is more formal. And remember how it communicates something before you've even opened it. It shows a level of respect. It says you are worthy of this letter. Think about when you apply for a job and you never even hear anything, and think about how much that annoys you. I hear that happens all the time nowadays. Think about how you would feel even if you just got a brief email like, hey, we didn't choose you. But what happens if you actually get a letter? It feels respectful, right? So that's why we're going to put this in the form of a formal letter. So things to think about: look at the textbook for help before you start. There's a section in my edition, it starts on page 442, that gives you an example of a refusal letter. I will say their example is in an email. We're not doing that. We're doing a formal letter, right? But it kind of talks you through how to deliver the bad news, what order to put it into, how to get the right tone. It gives you some things to think about. So definitely take a look at that. Definitely respect the letter format, and that'll be in the next video, business letter format. You definitely want to do that. And again, really think about that language, right? This should be a one-page letter. You don't want to take too much of their time. And in all honesty, there's odds are they're not going to read it enormously thoroughly anyhow. So a nice one-page letter, and you have to get everything across that you need to get across. Make sure it looks good visually. This is something we'll talk about more and more as the semester progresses, but you're delivering something and you want it to look pleasing to the eye as well as the language being pleasing to the ear or the mind. For goodness sake, make sure it's edited and proofread very, very carefully. Definitely a good idea to have someone else's eyeballs on it. Nice, courteous close. when I have live classes, we'll debate what the best close is. I tend to stick with sincerely. If I'm writing a letter of recommendation and I really, really strongly support that person, I might say most sincerely, but I tend to stick with that. On emails, I tend to go with best, but I get made fun of for that too, because apparently that's quite an academic thing to do. But I tend to just choose sincerely. I think it's forthright and clear. And so at any rate, sign it, and you don't have to scan your signature in. Don't worry about that. You do not have to do that. And then submit for your Brightspace. Something else I would suggest too, think about how you address it. If you think back to last week, I asked you to look at some offerings about appropriate language, inclusive language, that kind of thing. One of the things that's changing really rapidly right now is gender and how it's being used in language. Think about we're often identifying ourselves by our preferred pronouns. There's a lot more fluidity, right? So assuming someone's gender by using Mr., Miss, or Ms. is really outdated. So I think it's best in letters to write dear first name, last name. Every once in a while, you don't know who it is. You can say to whom it may concern. Obviously, in this case, you would know. So I would make up a name and say dear first name, last name. I think it's much better than assuming a gender and potentially offending someone. So just something else to think about. As usual, if you have any questions, give me a holler. I look forward to hearing how you let these poor folks down. All right, take care.